Hello everybody, my name is Robert Hatcher. I'm a data scientist, a songwriter, and the founder of Origin, a company that's using data analytics and blockchain technology to secure publishing royalty for music artists. But before I start, I want to say thank you so much for this incredible opportunity. Where I'm from, opportunity isn't something that's always given. And I'd like to start off by telling you about the origin of who I am as an entrepreneur. See, this picture to your left is the house that I grew up in, a small city called in Selma, Alabama. And in this city, Selma is a place where the poverty rate is 92% higher than the national average. The unemployment rate, is 92% higher than the national average. The poverty rate is 174% higher than the national average. And according to the FBI, it's the 8th most violent city in the country, which is crazy to think about because that means you could be anywhere in America and there's a 99.96% chance that you're much safer than where I grew up. Makes me beg to ask the question, if your child was raised here, what opportunities do you believe they would have in life? But it was the same environment that I learned a very valuable lesson that my father told me. He told me that entrepreneurship is a vehicle for you to create your own opportunities and can drive you out of any circumstance regardless of the odds. And that's why he's the greatest entrepreneur I've ever met. See, my father opened up his own lawn care service. He took care of me, my 3 siblings, and my mother. And the thing that stuck out to me was these 3 characteristics, but there was one that stuck out more than any, and that was his doggedness, his stubborn determination. It didn't matter if he had to drive 3 hours away for a job, had to cut 9 yards that day, or if he was working with a busted lawnmower. There was absolutely nothing that was going to inhibit his determination and his ambition to make his company successful. See, my father taught me how to avoid the unemployment rate. He taught me how to avoid poverty. But what we could not escape was the violence in our city. Unfortunately for me, when I was 14 years old, my father was shot and left for dead because a man needed to steal his car while he was running away from the police. And as you can imagine, this was a difficult time for me, but the way that I got through it was getting into music. This is my best friend and future business partner. His name is Kevin Taylor. We call him KT for short. And we started our own audio production company. Basically, we help artists create music and publish their music. And we were doing pretty well. We even got a chance to work with several labels owned by the likes of T.I. and Eminem. But it was difficult for us to scale because we were in such a small market. And we're not the only ones with this issue. See, when it comes to the publishing and production industry, 67% of the revenue is generated across 7 states, making it hard for a smaller artist in a smaller market to tap into those same resources because we either have to move or we have to deal with the issues of distance and logistics. So I wanted to create my first tech company, a recording application that allows artists to record from any location in real time. But let's be honest, as a minority with no technology experience and no resources, what is it that I know about building a tech company? And the answer is, I don't know anything. But Georgia State gave me an opportunity to learn, and that's what I've been doing, building my company one course at a time. In undergrad, I graduated with honors in psychology. I used classes like behavior modification, decision making to understand the pain points of my customers. When I got into the MBA program, classes like project management, teaching me Scrum and Agile training, helped me increase my productivity by 33%. But where I learned to develop our unique value proposition has been in this past year, my research in unstructured data and distributed databases. This is where we learned to build a solution to solve the biggest data error issue in music publishing history. Allow me to expand on that. See, every time a song is created, it collects 2 types of royalties. One is the sound recording, but the other that most people are unaware of is called a mechanical royalty, also known as the publishing. It is the written musical composition and the lyrics of the song. Most independent artists are completely unaware of this process. So unaware that streaming services have filed 46 million cases of payment notices to the Copyright Office for unidentified songwriters. And that sucks because these cases and these royalties are valued for $2.5 billion. And we're talking about the smaller artists like myself who are not collecting these. It was at this point I knew we had to focus more on collecting royalties for artists. But there was one moment that really changed the trajectory of our whole company. This moment right here. I'm sitting and I'm talking to the vice president of Comcast Central Division, Bill Connors, who's now our mentor. And as I was talking to him and explaining our product and our solution, he stopped me and he said, I appreciate what you're doing for the artists, but I need you to understand that this is a major issue for us. Comcast owns one of the 3 major record labels in Universal. And he said when it comes to Universal and the other 2 major companies, we have a $2 billion annual liability. Because if we can't track who's on a publishing company or on a publishing agreement, then we open ourselves up to liability. Then he slammed this article that was printed that day from Rolling Stone. He says, this is what we're dealing with. Most of you probably never heard of Daniel Marino. He's a young songwriter from Philadelphia who helped Usher create a song called Bad Girl back in 2004 and was just awarded $44 million because he was left off that publishing agreement. Bill sat there and told me, you won't believe the lawyer fees that we've had to pay this past decade to deal with these type of issues. It was then I know that we're not just dealing with the $2.5 billion issue, but we're dealing with the $4.5 billion issue, where Comcast is so bullish of what we're doing. Bill decided to invest in us and take us through their accelerator program because he said, I want to make sure Universal is the first major company that uses this technology. So I'd like to introduce to you Origin. What we do, as you see, I'm recording with my friend. And our unique value proposition is actually taking the metadata from the song. So this is the end of the song. While the song was being created, we take the process of the creation and we put that data into a publishing agreement. Now, this agreement has a link to it that will be linked to our blockchain database that anybody can go and view. And for the first time, we can actually go and audit every song. So if there's any type of dispute of who created the song or what the contributions are, you can check this public database. You can see the percentage of ownerships. You can see who contributed to the record. And that way, we can save record labels from billions of dollars in lawsuits, as well as save music artists billions of dollars in collecting their royalties. Our revenue model is simple. It's mainly a subscription service. We also have a transaction fee. But our biggest revenue stream is a 5% royalty that we take for every song distributed on the platform. That's basically a perpetuity that on average will bring $300 per song into the company. Now, our team isn't here just to start a venture. We're here to revolutionize an industry that hasn't seen innovation since World War I. Kevin Taylor is still with me today. He currently works as a senior product manager at Compass, real estate tech company. Our CTO, Giovanni Farr, is getting his PhD in computer science and works as the lead security analyst for State Farm. And last, I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. Because you've given me an opportunity to become a better entrepreneur, we're here to give music artists across the world that same opportunity by giving them the billions of dollars that they've lost. Thank you.
All right, judges, you have 10 minutes for questions.
This is great. My first question is, how would this technology, I'm trying to understand exactly how it works, and how would the technology have affected that Usher lawsuit for $44 million? What, if they were using your technology, who would be using it, and how would it work?
So the way that it works is if you can either use our online recording application to create your song, or you could download our plugin that works with the 3 major recording applications that people are already comfortable using. So when you download the plugin and as you're recording the song, we're tracking, I don't know if you're familiar with like GitHub, basically like a version control system, or if people are familiar with like Microsoft Word, you know, it saves versions of your Word document before it crashes. Essentially, we're doing the exact same thing at different intervals. So all that data is being stored onto the database. So that way you can go and check to see who's actually creating that song. And before you save the file, there's a publishing agreement where we take that data and put it into it. So in the case of Usher and Daniel Marino, while they're recording, our technology is actually saving and providing a proof of record of that recording and the creation of that document. So one, the artist doesn't actually have to worry about creating a publishing agreement because we do it for them. And then the label doesn't have to worry about tracking all the other collaborators that Usher is working with, because they could just simply go into our database to verify that information.
So it works with Ableton and Pro Tools?
Yes.
Hi, congratulations on all your achievements.
Thank you so much.
It was a great presentation. Can you walk us a little bit through your day? Like, how do you split your time between the MBA and your company? How time consuming is really the studies that you're doing? So
I allocate 15 hours to school and 55 hours to the company. Tuesdays and Thursdays are typically my school days. From 8 to 2 o'clock is usually the time I'm working on the company, and I use Saturdays, late Saturdays, to kind of work on my homework.
Hey, Robert, congratulations. Great job.
Thank you.
I want to talk about your history, where you grew up. What values or traits that you had growing up that kept you out of trouble? You said you were in a high crime area. What do you think helped you do that, and what your strengths in avoiding and getting to where you are today?
I would definitely have to say watching my father. I think we kind of have a similar personality. A lot of my family members have been to jail, been getting caught up in streets and different things. But what I saw from him was kind of a stubbornness to not necessarily get caught up in the same things that some of our family members were getting caught up in. Seeing how hard he was working, that drove me to actually want to do something to put him in a better situation. Because I've seen that type of work ethic, and I felt like if we had a better environment, he could do a lot more. So seeing that, witnessing that, he would wake me up at 5 o'clock, we'd be out in the yard at 6 o'clock, and it's not like this beautiful California weather down south. It's a lot of humidity. And working in that type of setting, he always said, if you don't get your education, this is where you're going to end up. So having that type of drive and seeing that and witnessing that always motivated me to put our family in a better position.
Thank you, Robert. Great presentation. So the music industry is, as you said, a long-standing, hasn't changed much, and certainly a very defensive industry when it comes to technology. And there's a lot of powerful people in it. So what do you foresee as being the big challenges up ahead, and how are you preparing for those battles that you know are going to come?
I would say, one, I think it definitely helps to have Comcast. We're working through the sales cycle right now to try to get Universal. That would be obviously huge. When it comes to publishing specifically, it's never been there's never been an industry leader. If I could try to make the analogy, it's almost like H&R Block and taxes, right? Before TurboTax, you had to go somewhere to find somebody to do your taxes. A publishing entity is usually different than a recording industry, and you would have to find a different publisher to file your publishing documents. So it's already been kind of democratized. So what we're trying to do is similar to what TurboTax did in the industry, is introduce it as a technology so that the user can use it themselves instead of having to find a legitimate publisher that they can work with.
Congratulations, Robert.
Thank you.
Amazing story. I would like to know what makes you tick. What's your passion in life?
My passion has always been, again, I go back to that word doggedness. Coming up in the environment that I came in, I just never wanted to be a person where I feel like I had to submit or surrender because of the environment that I was in. I have 22 aunties and uncles. You can imagine how many cousins I have. I'm the first one to actually graduate in my family and get their degree. Like I said, going back to my father, because of that and that standard that he showed me, I've always been extremely determined, extremely stubborn in that way to make sure that I succeed in life, and that's really the thing that makes me tick more than anything else.
So what would you say is the why behind this particular business? Like, who is it that you're trying to help the most, and why does that matter so much to you?
Say independent labels and independent music artists and major record labels. The major record labels, because from a business standpoint, if you can get in with one of the 3 major record labels, that could change the trajectory of your whole company. Independent music artists, because at this particular time, it's a market that's growing in an amazing way. I think independent music artists' streaming revenue has increased by 80% since 2016. When we talk about global streaming revenue, 40% of that is coming from Japan. There's a genre called K-pop that is blooming. And a lot of those international markets don't have a major record label. They're all independent artists. So we feel like our technology would be perfect for that market to not just take over here in the US, but be a perfect match internationally.
And why is it you personally that cares so much about it? Or is it just because it's a market opportunity?
No, growing up, me and my friends probably lost over $300,000 simply for being ignorant, not knowing how to file our own publishing agreement. Also had a friend, I was telling this story earlier. If anybody who remembers OT Genesis, he had a #2 hit single. It's called Like I'm in Love with the Coco. And a friend of mine's son actually sold him that beat for $200 and ended up losing $2 million just because he did not know and understand how to file his own publishing. So seeing younger artists, myself being taken advantage of and not being able to recoup some of the revenue that we're generating, I think is a tragedy.
Robert, where are you in revenue now, and where do you see your revenue going in 5 years from now?
So right now we're actually finished building up our plugin. We have a paid pilot that we're working on in July of this year. And I want to say in October we're doing a product release. So our first revenue will actually come from that paid pilot, and we're looking to continue to work with Universal in that sales cycle.
Is there anything that you do right now or that you envision wanting to do to change things in your community where you grew up?
Yes. A lot of artists, especially in Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, down south, a lot of us don't really have the resources to really expand. So what happens a lot of times is that artists in Atlanta, artists in Florida, some of the major markets, they will go and kind of take the songs and the music from artists in those smaller markets and then profit off of it. This way we could actually help those artists in my community, help those artists who may be in a smaller market.
About following Ariane's question, one thing is the big players and all the interest behind there, but we all know that technology goes faster, way faster than governments and legislation. And that's a worldwide thing. So what about artists that perform here, but they got some royalties over there in the other side of the world?
Say the last part again.
What about the artists that they're in the U.S., based in the U.S., but their music is global? So what about the rest of the countries and how you're going to deal with legislations and governments?
Well, so the government has, government agencies have a free service called a PRO, a Publishing Rights Organization. And they basically go and collect all the royalties internationally as well as domestic for the publishers. So that way you don't have to necessarily worry so much about legislations. There's already an organization that goes and collects their royalties on their behalf, and they collect it and they pay the publishers like us and the recording labels.
How are you balancing school and work?
Well, I would say actually use school and work hand in hand. Like for example, right now I'm taking a machine learning class. I'm using some of the techniques that we're developing, using it with the company. The name of my program is called the MBA Flex program. It's a flexibility. I choose courses that have directly ties into my business.
Thank you, Robert.